Pain is temporary, sometimes hard to carry. Trauma you're trying to bury, probably wish you had a fairy. I got a plan, listen to understand. I healed myself, created emotional love. It was nights I cried, wasn't okay I lied. So one day I asked God how to escape this facade. I heard go to the root and give yourself spiritual fruit. That is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I'm not done, I'm on the road. You gotta feel the pain. Just don't let it sting. Feel and release. This is how you gain peace. And all of that is fine. But make sure you go to the divine. God is the key to completely set you free.
Welcome to another episode of Raw and Uncut, where we speak on real topics with real facts and bold opinions. Today we're going to talk about how to release childhood trauma. When I was in college, this is when I really learned how to heal my trauma, and I actually learned about childhood trauma. Lately I have become to specialize in it, I guess. But it started when I was in college, and what happened was I started to come into my gifts. At the time I didn't know that I had any gifts or anything like that, but at the time I was just having so much anxiety and so much depression because it was I was feeling a lot of the stuff that I went through as a child come back, and it's and also I was coming into my gifts at the same time. So it was a trying time for me. I was very depressed. I had a lot of anxiety. It was I couldn't get one assignment done in college because I had so much anxiety. And it's crazy because I was actually in college for psychology. So I actually took a class. I think this is probably one of the main courses that stuck with me, and it was a class called Growth and Development. In that class I learned how each stage of your life, how your brain develops and stuff like that. So when you're a child, all of your triggers, your thought process, everything develops during your childhood. So it's whatever you've seen as a child, it shaped how you think and how you move today. So for example, if I don't know, if you've seen a lot of arguing in your parents' relationship as a child, you might grow up and you might be very confrontational when it comes to the other sex or things like that. It's the way that you think and the way that you process things, the way that you react to things, your normalcy comes from what you've seen as a childhood. So whether it's right or whether it's wrong, it's normal to you because that's what you were taught. That's literally how your brain was wired to work and respond to those certain situations. So when it comes to childhood trauma, you have to go back and address that trauma so that you can form healthy relationships, form healthy connections, and just have healthy habits and a healthy life in general. Because childhood trauma could really deter you from what you need to do in life and just having a normal fucking day. Kizzy, because you could just have so many triggers and anxiety and insomnia and flashbacks. I've dealt with it all, so it's I know how that could be. And it's when I'm coaching my students, they're well, I don't know why I feel like this, or I'm so depressed, I don't know how to get out of it, and things like that. And it's most I want to say it's probably, I think it's I got the percentage written down somewhere, child, but it's 90 something % of your trauma, it comes from your childhood. So I had to address it. And when I took that class, that really triggered something in me, and I had to really take time out. There was times I was just sitting in the car. Well, it was a lot of times during that time I was just sitting in the car every day, all day and night. I was just smoking in the car, crying my eyes out, and I would just be thinking and thinking and thinking about my childhood. Okay, this happened, that's why I think like this. This happened, okay, that's why I do this. And it really just put everything in perspective for me. So when I put everything in perspective, I understood what I needed to change, what wasn't actually healthy, and that's what kind of helped me to come up out of it. So there was a time I just sat in the car and I'm just God, help me heal. How do I heal this? How do I get through this? And because at that time I already understood a lot of like where, you know, my triggers and all of that came from. I already understood a lot of it, but I didn't know how to like heal it and deal with it and release it. And that's kind of what made me create my book. Well, after I like started coaching and getting into spirituality, I created a guided shadow work journal. And the journal, it goes through like, basically you'll do the questions and you'll start with just like acknowledging what happened in your childhood, because a lot of us think that the things that happen in our childhood are normal. And like, no shade to anybody, but like, you know, the things that I went through in my childhood, like I had friends, like I'll say certain stories and they'll be looking at me like like what the fuck, like that ain't normal. But to me it was just like, you know, whatever, like, because you know that was my normal. And when you think that's your normal, you think that your triggers, your reactions, the way that you act in the world, you think it's normal because that's how you grew up, but it's not. So to address it, you have to first acknowledge like what happened. You have to acknowledge like what you went through as a child. Once you do that, the next thing is to understand how it affected you. So for example, you know, like my mom was heavily on alcohol when I was a child, and you know, I had to address like what that caused in me. Like for example, I have like a huge fear of intimacy. She wasn't very present when I was a kid, and you know, she got better as I got older, but she wasn't very present as I was a kid because, you know, she was dealing with her own trauma and things like that from her childhood that she never understood how to heal because we didn't have those resources. So when she was dealing with that, it was like she wasn't present for me, and for me, I didn't have that intimacy, I didn't have that connection, that bond. So because of that, I developed a fear of intimacy. And that's not the only reason I had a fear of intimacy, but that was one of them. And you know, that reason for that, I had to go back and address, okay, I deserved love as a child. You know what I mean? I deserved to be present, or just I deserved to have a parent that was present with me as a child. That was not my fault. I had to go back and address, you know, what happened, how it affected me, and how I can heal it. So now that I know, okay, I had a parent who wasn't present as a child. I have a fear of intimacy because I had a parent that wasn't present as a child. How can I get through this? Now you have to address what you can do for yourself to fix it, because it's not going to be anybody else's responsibility to deal with your triggers and your insecurities and what you know, develop due to your childhood. It's not your fault that you have these issues, but it is your responsibility to, you know, fix it. So I would say I'm still kind of like healing my fear of intimacy. That's one of those things that's been like the hardest one to, you know, push through, but I feel like I've gotten way better than I used to be. I used to push people away. When I was in high school, my relationships, it was like I would get into a connection, and it's like I would crave a connection so much, and once I got it, it would be good for a while. I would probably be like super duper clingy, and then it was like after a few months, I would like withdraw. It was like I would lose all interest. I didn't want to be bothered. It was like I would want to get away. Like it's kind of like I would feel like I was suffocating. Like I would feel like I was suffocating, like I was about to drown or something like that. Like I felt claustrophobic. It's like I would be like, you got to get away from me. And as a kid, like when I was in high school, I used to be like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like seriously, because I just really, I couldn't do it. And I wanted the relationship though, and it was like I would do this back and forth thing, and it was a cycle to where I would be messing up connections, or I would have these short-term flings or whatever, and it's like I never really got to that true intimacy because I was so afraid. And it wasn't until I went to college, and it was like, this probably I had a relationship in college, a short relationship in college, and when it ended, when I broke up with him, it was like, okay, enough. This is when I realized it was a cycle. This is when I realized it was a pattern, because like, you know, like when you're a kid, you don't really recognize the pattern as a kid. You know, you just kind of be doing shit. But for real though, you just be doing shit. And then like when you get older, you start to realize, okay, this happens so many times. So maybe it's me. Maybe it's something that I need to address within myself. So after I took that growth and development class, that was right when I got into anxiety and depression and things like that. And that was after, right, not too long after that, that's when I broke up, you know, with who I was dating with at the time. So it was just like, that's when I started to realize, okay, it's me. I was like, I have a fear of intimacy. Like I'm scared to get close to people. And there was a lot of issues that I realized within myself that I had to fix. You know, I actually used to be like a really mean girl in high school. And I still was a sweetheart, but it was just like, I was so pessimistic with life and just like with myself, with everybody around me. I was confrontational with everybody. I used to get in like arguments all the time. And I just had to like sit back and think like, damn, like what's wrong? I really had to think like what's wrong with me. And I took the time to figure it out. I started to journal. I started to just think and process and think about like everything I went through as a child. I started to have flashbacks, and that's when I fell into like a deep depression. And I was going through shadow work and a dark night of the soul without knowing it. At the time, I still didn't know about spirituality. I didn't know about like anything to do with like spirituality and healing. I didn't know about that shit. So I was just like in a deep depression, bro, trying to figure out like how to get through it. And not too long after that, that's when I dropped out of college. This was around COVID time, so that shit was stressful as fuck. If you was in college during COVID time, you know that shit was nutty. So it was just like, we were doing college online and shit like that. I was like, man, fuck this shit. I couldn't do one assignment. I had so much anxiety. So I was just like, and then it was like with track, like my ankle was fucked up. So I was just like, you know what? I don't care for college. Like I actually hated college. I don't like being around people 24/7. Side note, who likes, I don't know why I like college, because you gotta be around somebody 24/7. Like if I gotta get up and see somebody every time I eat something, wipe my ass, take a shower, that shit is not for me. But anyways, so yeah, I dropped out of college and I moved back to Ohio. Now, when I moved back to Ohio, I thought that, I missed family, I guess, because I was away from my family when I moved to South Carolina. I was away from them for like 5-6 years. So I was like, I miss family and I wanted to go back there. But I realized very quickly why I had so many issues. Like, very quickly, like, the environment that I grew up in, it was very negative. It was very pessimistic. I realized how much my family was like a dictatorship, and it was like they criticized everything, and it was like I felt like I couldn't do anything right when I was around them as a kid. And I started to realize these things, and I'm like, okay, this is why I have these insecurities, you know what I mean? Like, because like in high school, it was like I always felt like my opinions or like the things that I was doing was kind of like invalid. Like I wasn't shy or like timid. Like I still spoke my mind for sure, but I always kind of felt like my opinions were invalid, or like the shit I was doing was like invalid. And I think they actually call it like imposter syndrome, like where you actually feel like you're not worthy of what you're doing or you're not doing anything right. And it came from like what I went through as a child, and I had to like realize that. So when I moved back to Ohio, like I got more of a crashing reality put on me, because it was like, damn, it all makes sense, you know what I mean? It all kind of came together, and it was like, it was depressing, but it was like a revelation at the same time. So I remember sitting in the car and I was just crying, and I was just like, God, like how can I, release this? Like how can I heal? I just want to be happy. Like I just want to feel better. I just want peace, you know what I mean? And I remember having a conversation with my dad one day, and he was just like, what is peace to you? And I was just like, I don't know. And I was just like, I want to be able to just live and just like, I don't know. So I read a book. It was my cousin's book, and it was called From Pain to Power. And the book helped me to look at my pain from a different perspective. Because at the time I was in such a, why did this happen to me? Why am I like this? My life is so fucked up type of energy that I didn't realize how to heal it or transmute that energy. I didn't know. So, and I was always into like zodiac readings and things like that, but I still at the time didn't know too much about spirituality. And so when I read that book, it changed my thought process. It put me on a different route. It was like I was going down south and I read that book and it was like skirt, and I went north, because it was like, okay, I went through this, but it made me a better person. Because if I can take this pain and I can transmute it into power, and I can transmute it into healing and into love and into a lesson, then, you know, it's not that bad. So I took a lot of those things and I started to figure out how I can fix them. So, okay, I have insecurities. I feel like my opinions are valid. How can I fix that? I can start speaking my mind. I can start setting boundaries. I can start validating myself. You know what I mean? So that's what really, you know, pushed me into that. And then it was a time where this is when I started to get into spirituality, and I learned about affirmations and like meditation. When I started meditating, my whole game changed. Like when I started to meditate, I felt so much calmer. Like I felt so much calmer because I had so much anxiety at the time. It was ridiculous. Like my social anxiety, everything. I used to be shaking, and it was just like when I started to meditate, I was really able to come back into my body, come back into my mind, come back into myself, and understand, okay, this happened to me, but I'm not there anymore. Like I'm not in that moment anymore. I'm here and I can fix that. So to really heal and release your trauma, you do have to go back to the time that you went through that trauma. Like I had to go through, you know, sometimes there were like domestic violence in my house, and I had to go back to some of those times, like those flashbacks, because I used to have flashbacks at the time too, and they were like haunting me. So it was like I had to go back to some of those instances and just be like, okay, what did I need as a child? And I had to think, like, I was so scared. Like you have to think like a 7-8-year-old in a house with domestic violence, you had to be so afraid. And I had to think about that, like, okay, as a little girl, you were scared. You were scared. You wanted help. You wanted someone to hug you. You wanted someone to rescue you, and you didn't have anybody to come for you. So that makes you feel alone. That makes you feel unworthy. That makes you feel not good enough, but you are. So I had to go back into that time and give myself that love I need. I had to hug myself. You know, I had to give myself those affirmations. I had to give myself that love and that care that I didn't get at that time. And that's what helps you transmute it. That's what helps you transmute it into power. Because nobody else can give you that love and that healing but yourself and God. Like that's a personal relationship with you and God. That's how you fix it. So, yeah, so when I started to do that, it really, really, really helped. But I will have to say, there was a while where I was like, I wouldn't say that I was depressed or anything. Like I felt better. Like I felt happy. I felt at peace. I felt love. But I still had some of those triggers. I still had some things that I was still trying to release, you know. And you gotta be patient with yourself, because you've had these issues, you had these traumas and these instances like your whole life. So you can't think that it's just gonna go away overnight or over in a week. So it might have taken me about 1.5 years to like truly release everything, or most of it at least, because I'm still trying to release some shit. But it took me about 1.5 years to like release a lot of it. And somatic meditation, it really helps. Like if you look up somatic meditation and try it, when you meditate, you can look at to like what chakras are imbalanced. Like, so say I'm meditating and my back is just super duper tense, because that was a huge problem for me. My back is just super duper tense. My back has all these aches and stuff like that. That's your spine. That's your root chakra. Your root chakra is like your safety, your comfort, your stability. You know, I grew up in poverty, so it was just like all of those things contributed to my root chakra being severely imbalanced. And I didn't realize that until I did somatic meditation to like recognize and acknowledge what was off balance and what I needed to heal. Your chakras, meditation, cleansing, all of that just helps so much with like your mental health. It's crazy. And like if you talk to any of my students, they'll tell you like their mental health issues have like what's it called, transformed and improved dramatically. I've had students who were like super depressed when I met them, but when we started like with their meditation and their journaling and their cleansing, and they felt better. Like they start to feel at peace. And of course, like everybody falls back and it gets back up and falls back down and gets back up, but for the most part, your mental is in a much healthier and better perspective. So you can do this like by starting with your shadow work. So let's go through the steps. You start with your shadow work. When you do your shadow work, you have to basically just go get my book. This is why I created the book, to be honest. Like, it just helps you to like break down everything that I'm saying with the questions. Like, all the questions are done for you, so you just have to go through all the sections. The sections are split up between first acknowledging what happened in your childhood. It's just asking questions like, what was your relationship with your mom like? What was your relationship with your dad like? How did the females around you treat you? Did you live in poverty? What type of resources did you have? What type of relationships did you see? What type of careers did you see? These are things that you just need to acknowledge and just put in your brain. Okay, this is what I saw growing up. This was my environment. This was my life. That's what you need to acknowledge. And then, you know, a lot of things we forget from our childhood. So when you take that time to go and just write and reflect on like what actually happened in your childhood, it might just put a lot of things in, it will put a lot of things in perspective just from that. The next section is figuring out how it affected you. Okay, I lived in poverty. How did that affect my mindset? Okay, now I have a lack mindset. I feel like there's not enough resources in the world. I feel like there's not enough money in the world. I feel like I don't deserve these opportunities, or I feel like I don't deserve, you know, what I'm getting. But you do. So you have to change that lack mindset to feel like, okay, the universe is full of limited possibilities. The universe is filled with unlimited resources. You know what I mean? You got to change your mindset and redirect your mindset. So again, the second section is just acknowledging how it affected you. So the lack mindset would be how it affected me. The next section I actually think is light work. So it's just really figuring out like some of those good parts of yourself that you suppress. Because a lot of people don't realize shadow work isn't just finding out the traumas that are within you. It's also finding out those good things that are inside of you that you might have forgot about. So like, for example, my heart. I have such a good heart. Like, I'm such a kind, sweet, caring person. And like I said, when I was in high school, I was such a mean girl, really. And not like a mean girl. Like, I wasn't a bully. I actually hated bullies. But I was pessimistic with life. But when I was a kid, I was a very vibrant, loving, generous, beautiful person. And when I got to kind of like mid-elementary, middle school, I went through a lot of, you know, I was in the hood, so I had to toughen up, you feel me? I had to get that skin on me. So it was just like I suppressed that. And it wasn't until I got into spirituality and I did shadow work that I realized, okay, you're actually a really loving person. You're actually a really kind person. Like, you really don't like to be mean. You really don't like to have this barrier up. You know what I mean? You don't like it. So why not just be nice? You know? And it's just like I started to realize I don't have to like fit in with society, and I don't have to like take in the perspectives that society has put on me through my childhood trauma. So I want you guys to realize, like, a lot of the things that we do and say and react and all of it just comes from like what we seen growing up, what we were taught, what we were programmed to be. So it's up to us to redirect it. So yeah, that was light work. And then the next section is figuring out how you can fix it, how you can transform it. So you have to go back. So then you go back, okay, your relationship with your mom. How can you fix, these triggers? Or how can you fix, certain things within yourself? That's the first step. That's your shadow work. The next step will be creating a routine. You have to actively choose happiness every single day, every single hour, every single minute, every single second, every single motherfucking millisecond. You have to choose happiness. You have to actively work for your happiness. It's not just gonna come to you. It's not just gonna happen. You're not just gonna be happy. You have to work for it. You have to access it. You have to put that within yourself. You have to speak it over yourself, speak it into yourself, and work with God, work with the universe to create your happiness, or you just won't have it. So I tell my students, create a routine. Put in your routine, things that will improve your happiness. If you have anxiety, you need to take salt baths at least 4 or 5 times a week. No kidding. Because it releases a lot of that energy. And a lot of people that have anxiety, you probably pick up on a lot of energy. You're probably very, very empathic. So you have to release a lot of that energy every single time you feel built up energy. So when I got into spirituality, I definitely took salt baths like 4 or 5 times a week, if not every fucking day, because it just made me feel so much lighter. Like it really helped my mindset. And now that I'm like more into my spiritual journey, I don't have to do it that much. I could probably do it 2-3 times a week, or I could probably do it once or twice a week, and I'm fine. But when I first started, I needed it so much to just like really push through those triggers. And depression too, take those salt baths. Insomnia, take those salt baths. Drink your tea before bed. Start journaling every single morning. Meditate every single morning, if not 5 times a day. Yes, 5 times a day. You can meditate for 5 minutes in a car in between your break, like on your lunch break or whatever, on your way. Shit, it don't matter. But you could do 5-minute meditation. You can do a 10-minute meditation. It don't matter. That shit helps so much to calm your mind, especially if you have anxiety. So make your routine. Do that. Let me see what else you can put in your routine. Nature. I used to sit in nature and cry. When I was going through shadow work, I sat in nature and I would cry to God. And I cannot tell you how healing that was for me. Like, I used to be in Mill Creek Park, sitting by the river, sitting by the trees and stuff like that, just connecting with nature, and I would cry. Like, I would cry so much, and I would just cry my eyes out to God, scream if I need to, and I would start to see like visions in broad daylight of my childhood, like flashbacks. And this was me healing. Like, this was me like shedding a lot of the things that I was going through, and it was like they call it the dark night of the soul, because it is a dark night of the soul. Like, you have to like really walk through the darkness to get your light, and you can't be afraid of it. Like, you cannot be afraid of your demons. These are literally your demons. These are your this is your shadow side. And that's why a lot of spiritual people say you gotta sit with your demons. You do, because you have to sit with them and understand, how did you get here? How did you get in my space? And what am I doing to allow you to stay in my space? That's how you get rid of those demons in your space. You gotta sit with them, you gotta level with them, you gotta talk to them, you have to understand them, and then you cast them out. And they can't never come back if you continuously put that power, that light, that love into yourself, because now you understand how they got there. You feel me? So it all comes with like understanding and just like breaking it down. Yeah, nature is a really good healer. Stretching. It helps to like move a lot of that energy, that stuck energy in your body. So especially if you're dealing with like insomnia, if you're really like depressed and you're like drained, you don't feel like getting up, stretch, go do some yoga, go step outside and do some yoga, go step outside and stretch, walk barefoot outside. That'll help you ground yourself. It'll help heal your root chakra. You have to do a bunch of things. Just do things that will add to your happiness. That's how you create your own peace. That's how you create your own happiness. To truly release your childhood trauma, you have to forgive. So I feel like one of the most effective ways to release your childhood trauma would be, I would say, to forgive. write down, like journal, especially like on a full moon. Just take some time out to just journal everything, your like everything that you're feeling, all the resentment, all the trauma. Journal it down and burn it. Like burn it under the full moon. Just burn it. It's a very healing and releasing. It's really a ceremony. It's really a ritual, but it really helps you to release. You can do cord cuttings, or you can also just like meditate on it. I really highly suggest writing it down. I actually used to work with like prison releases and like transitional housing, and I started a program. It was called Adversity United, and a lot of the guys there, they were like they were so depressed. They were going through a lot, you know, like when you come out of prison, you have all of these issues because, you know, what they go through in prison. And these were broken men, grown broken men, and I was only like 19, 20. These men were grown and broken, and I was just like, I gotta figure out a way to bring them together and release what they're going through. Because men, they feel like they can't feel things, they feel like they can't release, they feel like they can't talk about how they feel. I gotta figure out a way to get them to release what they're going through. So I took them and I got them around a campfire, and it was so beautiful. I said a poem with them. Actually, I'm gonna tell y'all this poem because it's really true. You have to be vulnerable in order to release what you're going through. And when I was, this was actually during the time I was going through shadow work and I got into spirituality. This is after I got into spirituality. I started meditating. I started doing readings, things like that. I was actually very happy. This is probably the happiest I ever been. Shit. And Spirit gave me this download of this poem, and it was called Vulnerability. And it goes like, there's power in vulnerability. To truly embody the feminine, you must accept not being in control. You must accept the unknown. Shit, I just had a brain freeze. Hold on. There is power in vulnerability. To truly embody the feminine, you must accept not being in control. You must accept the unknown. If you are afraid of the unknown, you will always be where you know. There is no growth in comfortability. Elevation comes when you accept what you don't expect. The only way to gain knowledge is to experience uncomfortable realities. You can't teach what you don't experience. Embrace pain as it brings you wisdom. Embrace being uncomfortable as it brings new comforts. To know how everything plays out is to be complacent. To be complacent is to be stagnant. That was never the plan. Your purpose is greater than your fears. Your love is greater than your pain. Your strength is greater than your weaknesses. And God is greater than your enemies. Trust and vulnerability. And I said that poem with them, and we actually broke the poem down and talked about vulnerability and what it means to be vulnerable. And they loved it. And I had them write down like a lot of the things that they were going through and the things that they were feeling, names, people that they want to forgive, what they went through. And I had them put it in an envelope and we burned it. And a lot of them were like crying. A lot of them were like, I needed this. Like, it really helps so much. And it's so powerful when you like really just write it down and truly allow yourself to feel these emotions and release it. You cannot release it if you do not feel those emotions, because you're just going to be bottling it in. And the thing about it is, when you bottle things in, it's like a pop. It's like a pop, soda pop, or whatever. Think about a pop, and you're just like, you keep it closed, okay? And you just keep shaking it up. Every time you go through something and you get a trigger, you're shaking that bottle. You keep on shaking that bottle. The more you shake that bottle, when you open that bitch, it's going, you know? So it's like, you gotta address it, because the more you don't address it, the stronger the pain gets. So you have to feel it. You have to experience these emotions, allow yourself to go through them, allow yourself to shed them, and then release them. And once you release them, I really highly suggest somatic meditation. Because when you do somatic meditation, it helps you to realize where these imbalances are inside of your body, inside of your chakras. Because a lot of this healthiness, like your wellness, everything really kind of boils down to your chakras. So if you figure out where these imbalances are in your chakras, it can help you to heal it, to really truly release it on your nervous system level, on on a mental level, on a physical level. So these imbalances don't just affect your emotions. That's how you release it, like emotionally wise, is with the journaling and the processing and all that helps your emotions, yeah, for sure. But it's still in your nervous system. You have to understand, like, when you go through these things, these anxieties, these triggers, they're in your nervous system. They're coming in your brain. So to really truly heal them, you have to figure out which chakras are in balance. You have to really do exercises and things like that to reverse your brain, to reverse your triggers, to reverse your nervous system. And it takes a lot of time. And it takes a lot of redirection. But it can be done. And once you get through those emotions, it makes it a whole lot easier to just go about life in general. And then once you release those emotions, it's just a matter of just continuously keeping up with the consistency, being consistent with just redirecting your mind, redirecting your nervous system and things like that. And that just happens regularly if you create a routine. And that's why I tell my students always, create a routine first. Because if you have that, you don't really have to think about a lot of this shit I'm telling you now. Because you're going to be consistent with redirecting your mind, redirecting your nervous system and things like that with your somatic meditation or just regular meditation too. You need kind of both. I don't really feel like you need just one. I feel like both are important. You could do, there's certain exercises you can do too, like I know there's one you go like this and you look up, and it helps to redirect. Because when you have these triggers, if you think about it how your body tenses up, say you have anxiety, so when you come across certain triggers, your body might tense up and you might not even notice your body is tensing up. And that's due to your nervous system having that trauma stored inside of it. So there's certain exercises that you do to literally reverse your nervous system. And it really helps. It really, 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 really helps. I feel like that's it. I feel like that's the gist of it. I feel like that's how you can really get started on releasing your trauma. If you really want to get the book to help you journal and get through this shadow work and really understand what you went through as a child and how you can redirect it. It also, my book has a part of my story in there, as well as tips for your routine. So if you're looking to create a routine, it'll have directions in there for that as well as some poems to help you out. It's literally a straight guide through shadow work. It'll help you completely out. The website is ghettoangels.com. Instagram is ghettoangels, with 2 Z's for the Instagram. And yeah, if you would like coaching on how to do this, you can also go to ghettoangels.com and book me for coaching. You have to book the consultation first. The consultation will include the initial consultation, where we would basically go over how you're doing right now, address your mental, where you are right now, and then we would actually create your routine and figure out your plan and where you want to go from here, and how I can help you to heal and get to a better and more healthier place in your mental and your emotional state, and spiritually wise as well. So yeah, the consultation also includes 2 sessions after that. If you go to the Instagram Ghetto Angels with 2 Z's, it'll break down the course on there. You'll see everything on there. But yeah, that's exactly how you release your childhood trauma. So thank you for tuning in with me. I love y'all. Follow us on Instagram at Raw and Uncut Official, and we'll see you next time.